Hi guys, Pavi is back. This time I'll be doing a preview of the Women's Australian Open 2026. You may have seen my other video where I previewed the men's, where I felt that it was going to be a very open Australian Open this year, and I was kind of veering away from the two clear favourites, Alcaraz and Sinner. And I'm going to do the same on the women's side in that I'm going to veer away from Arina Sabalenka and Igor Swiatek, who were the top two favourites for this year's Australian Open. And I'll give you the reasons why, and I'll also give you where I think the value is going to be from a betting point of view for the women's side. Mystic Pav is back, so I'm back with predictions in association with BetRight, who have kindly done some special Pavi boosts on some of the players that I think can go really well at this year's Australian Open. So I'm going to go straight into who I think is going to do well and where the value is. And for me, it's Mira Andreeva. So the teenager is really coming of age, and it was really fascinating to see her play this week in Auckland, where she won the title. She beat Victoria Makobo 6-3, 6-1, but the way that she played just showed to me that she's really kind of matured and has come of age. She didn't lose a single set all week, and she was hitting the ball really well. Now, it doesn't always mean the person that wins the tournament before the Australian Open that they're necessarily going to do well in that slam. In fact, it can work against you because you've put in so much effort into that event before the Australian Open. It could actually go to your detriment. But the reason why I'm not too concerned about Mira Andreeva is that she expended very little energy in winning that title. She won every game pretty much at a canter, and she just looks like she's matured. I've been looking at her body language, the way that she's speaking. She's burst onto the scene really as a 17, 18-year-old, kind of broke into the top 20, is now top 10, and then had a few disappointing results. She got frustrated. I think everyone expected her to kind of be a great candidate to win at Wimbledon, but she lost against Belinda Bencic in the quarterfinals in a really tight match. And then she had an early exit in the US Open. So she's kind of struggled to deliver kind of a great potential in the Grand Slams. But I think this is the year that she could really push on and go potentially all the way, definitely, if not all the way to the final, make her first Grand Slam final. And I think she's got a really good chance. I really like her attitude, and I think her game suits the Australian conditions really well. So Mira Andreeva is my value bet in this year's Australian Open. You can have a special Pavi boost bet for her to go all the way to the final, or even go on and win it. I think it's something that that I think she'll be fancying her chances. If you look at her draw, her highest ranked player in her side of the draw is Coco Gauff. And Coco Gauff, by her own admission, has been a little bit up and down at the moment in the last kind of year or so. Which is understandable. She kind of, she won slams, she became world number one, and then after that there's always going to be a little bit of ups and downs, especially for a young player like Coco Gauff. So I don't think Mira Andreeva would be too daunted by the prospect of having her in the same side of the draw. So that's kind of where my value is going to be for this year's Australian Women. But it's also going to be joined by Amanda Anisimova, who I think is really coming of age. Now, many people will obviously remember that Wimbledon final where she tragically really lost 6-0, 6-0 against Igor Swiatek. She completely froze. And, that could have really knocked someone's confidence. But it kind of went the other way for Anisimova. She really kind of knuckled down. She seemed to learn from it. And then, of course, she avenged Igor Swiatek in the World Tour final. She made the final of the US Open. So you're looking at a player who is really now beginning to get consistency at a high level. Now, she burst onto the scene at a very young age, but then she had a few problems. Unfortunately, the passing of her father put her back a few years, understandable. She had a few mental issues that she was dealing with. She completely went off the radar, but she is very much back on it. And I think she is someone else that I really fancy that could go quite deep here. She misses the big two, really, Sabalenka Swiatek in her draw. The highest ranked player in her draw is Jess Pegula, who Anna Missimova beat in the exhibition in Miami. So she'll have a little bit of confidence with that in that particular matchup. And I just think the time is right for Amanda. She's been knocking on the door now. The last two finals, the Grand Slam finals she's made. She's not had a particularly good record in Australia before, and even going into Australia this year, she lost to Marta Kostyuk in Brisbane, so it wasn't the best of preparations for her. But I think that she could be another candidate to really go deep here in this year's Australian Open. And again, if you check on the links below, there's a BetRight Pavi boosts on Amanda Anisimova to go deep in the Australian Open. So check those out and let me know what you think. Now, the reasoning that I'm kind of staying away in terms of getting behind Sabalenka and Swiatek are as follows. So Sabalenka is actually in some good form going into the Australian Open. She's won the World Tour final at the end of last year, and she's also backed that up by winning the Brisbane title. But there's been a lot of things going on with Sabalenka at the moment, which I think could be a bit of a distraction. We know that she loves life outside of the tennis court, which is great, and she's done loads of exhibitions and events. Obviously, the famous one that she did recently was the Battle of the Sexes with Nick Kyrgios, and she had a lot of scrutiny on that, a lot of media attention. She's recently signed a big deal with Emirates Airlines. She's very much in demand, but with that demand comes the pressures of sponsor obligations. So Sabalenka is now wanted to do media, to do promotion, to do things for the sponsors, and I just think that means that she could not quite be at 100% physically or mentally ready to win a slam at the Australian Open. That's my only reasoning, because on the court I think she's playing really, really well, but I think it just could get on top of her, which is why I think she might struggle to win the Grand Slam in the Australian Open this year. Iga Swiatek is a really interesting one. After she came back from her a doping ban last year, she really struggled. This is a player that was winning titles regularly. She couldn't win a title, but then she went to Wimbledon, a place that she's never won before, and actually won the title. Cantor in the final, obviously she double bageled her final, won that. But since then, her form's been a little bit up and down again. She struggled in the World Tour finals. If you look at her performances in the United Cup, she struggled against Eva Lees. Very, very close match. And then she obviously lost to Coco Gauff very, very comfortably. And also to Belinda Bencic. And really showing signs that she was struggling a little bit physically, maybe mentally, but she doesn't seem to be in the right kind of physical shape, I would say, going into the Australian Open. I don't know whether she's injured or not, or whether she's feeling a little bit of the pressure of kind of what's happened to her in the last 12 to 18 months. So that's the reason why I'm staying away from Swiatek, from this Australian Open. Sabalenka and Swiatek, they've won plenty of slams. They've both been world number ones. They've both been in the top five for many, 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 many years now, and they're class acts. But I think this year I would move away from them if you're looking for some value with the bookmakers and trying to get one over on the bookies. So that's kind of where I see my women's side of it. Obviously, I'll be keeping a close eye on the Brits as well. I'm a little bit disappointed. Only 3 women have actually made the main draw. 4 women have made the main draw this year. Emma Raducanu, Katie Bolter, Fran Jones and Sunny Cartle continue her great rise up the rankings. Do I think any of those 4 have a chance of going deep in the Australian Open? As much as I would love them to, the answer to that is no. I will be very surprised if there's any Brit that is still standing, including the men after round 3. I think they're really going to struggle to make the second week. But let's have a look. Let's see. Let's hope they do well. Obviously, Raducanu's the number 1 ranked woman. for GB, and she's got a relatively straightforward game on paper in her first round match, and potentially plays Sabalenka in round 3, which would be a real test for her. But we know that she enjoys playing Sabalenka. They had that amazing match at Wimbledon, and she's gone very close against Sabalenka, so it's a good matchup for Raducanu. If she can get through the first 2 games, then who knows. But these are my women's predictions. Let me know what you think. Let me know your predictions. Who you think is going to do well. Give me your dark horse, the ones that are a bit of value that maybe spring a big surprise. Madison Keys, I think, was a massive 50-1 shot to win the Australian Open, her first slam last year. No one really predicted that. Is there going to be someone like that that comes out of the pack? Let me know. Like, share, subscribe, and enjoy the Australian Open. Obviously, we're only a few hours away now, really, from the start of the Australian Open, so we're really looking forward to that. Yeah, enjoy the tennis. Right, guys, I will be back with more videos and previews and predictions as the event goes on. Take care. God bless. Bye.